Wonder if you've heard about the Winchester Mystery Mansion. It's this house in Cali, and it's one of the strangest houses you'll ever see. It's got hallway upon hallway leading ultimately nowhere. There are doors that don't go anywhere. There are windows and windows and windows. There's addition upon addition upon addition with really no rhyme or reason. And the reason, it was built by a gal named Sarah Winchester. Sarah was married to William. William had inherited his family's company, Winchester Repeating Arms. And so he inherited it, and he passed away, and she was distressed, looking for help and hope, and she goes to a psychic, and the psychic said, I've got a clear word for you. You need to go west. You need to move to California. You need to build a mansion. You need to build a home that will house all the souls that have been killed by a Winchester rifle over the years. And if you want to live, you've got to continue to build. The moment you stop building is the moment you will die. And so in 1886, she moves to San Jose, California, and legend has it that she never stopped working for the next 38 years. I've got a picture of it. Ended up having around 161 rooms and 24,000 square feet. She just built and built and built and built. There was no rhyme or reason, no purpose, no big picture of where the thing was going. There was no master plan. And sadly, many churches are like the Winchester Mansion. Just building and planning and starting programs and pulling off events with no overriding goal, no clarity, no master plan. But as we've seen in our week 3 of the Great Commission, the master has a plan. Matthew 28:18-20. There was a Barna study in 2018 that asked about the Great Commission. It was very discouraging. They found that 51% of churchgoers said, quote, they had never heard of the Great Commission. According to this study, it was a limited study, but half of people who go to church had never even heard of it. 25% could recall hearing the words but couldn't tell you the meaning. A little better. Only 17% knew what the Great Commission was of regular churchgoers. That means 83% of church attendees, according to this study, didn't know the primary existence of the church. Let me read it again. Matthew 28:18-20. All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go, therefore, and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to obey all that I've commanded, and behold, I'm with you always to the end of the age. So that if some pollster ever comes and asks you, what is the Great Commission, you had better answer correctly. And if you don't, I'm not going to own you. I'm going to disown you. I don't know who that person is. This church knows the Great Commission. These are the church's marching orders. This is the conclusion of this gospel. In many ways, it's the key to this whole gospel. This is like Jesus' commencement address. It's fitting. It's fitting that we have commencement addresses at graduations, right? Because it's not the end for the graduate. No, it's just the beginning for the graduate. And this is Jesus' commencement address. It's just getting going. His last words need to be our first work. So the main point is because Jesus has all authority, because Jesus is the all-authoritative King, we should submit to him and help others submit to him. He's the King. That's what this whole gospel's been about. It starts in Matthew chapter 1, verse 1, very first verse of the gospel telling us who he is. He's the son of David. He's the forever king. He's the son of Abraham for everyone. And he comes and he brings the kingdom and he preaches the gospel of the kingdom. And how does that kingdom spread? Through us. How does he become the forever king for everyone? He's entrusted it to us, the Great Commission, the Great Co-mission. We're on mission with him. We pray in the Lord's Prayer, your will be done, your kingdom come, on earth as in heaven. And the Great Commission, you and I, is how God answers that prayer. And this commission's for all Christians. I think sometimes, maybe because it has the verb go in it, actually it's not a verb, it's a participle. I'll show you that in a minute. It's got go in it, and it says nations. I think sometimes we think this is just for other Christians in other countries. I used to always ask young people, what's the first word that comes to mind when you hear the Great Commission? And 8 out of 10 times it was Africa. That's what they thought of when they heard the Great Commission. That's not wrong, but that's not right. The Great Commission is for every Christian. It's for all of us. This is for every disciple. Remember, nations just means non-Jewish people. In other words, all people, people of every kind. The Great Commission is for all Christians. It is not a calling for some, but a command for us all. So if you call yourself a Christian, this command's for you. So what does that entail? Fundamentally, primarily, it means make disciples. That's the main verb. You remember sentence diagramming? Showed you this before. This is really important. Let me show you how this sentence is structured. We've got a slide, I think. There we go. Therefore, don't forget that, verse 18, the main verb of this passage, the imperative of the passage is make disciples. That's the main point. This is what Jesus wants us to get. It's modified by three participles. Going, baptizing, and teaching. We looked at going last week. We'll look at baptizing and teaching in weeks to come. Today, I want to focus on the main thing, which is make disciples. Jesus, the one who has all authority, commands all his people to be about this work, making disciples. So let's ask first, what's a disciple? What is a disciple? What's a disciple of Jesus? Simply put, it means a follower. A disciple of Jesus is one who follows Jesus. It's a learner, a student, an apprentice, a practitioner. A disciple follows and obeys their master. That's what it means. It occurs 269 times in the New Testament, where the noun Christian occurs 3 times. I think we ought to jettison all talk of being a Christian, especially in Abilene, Texas. We talked about this in our Sunday school. What is a Christian? Well, a Christian is a follower of Jesus. Listen, Abilene, Texas has a lot of Christians, man. A lot of Christians, not as many followers of Jesus. I mean, we got Christian dogs in Abilene. I think the thing shut down, though. Did y'all pass this thing on South 14th and Sells? Christian dog training. Not joking. Didn't make it. I don't know what happened. I guess the dogs wouldn't pray before their meals. We need to forget calling ourselves Christians. We are followers of Jesus. That's what we are. 269 versus Christian, just 3 times. What does it mean? It means we follow him. Let's redeem this language. Are you a Christian? Well, I'm a follower of Jesus. Well, what's the difference? I'd love to tell you. Jesus did not come and die and rise to produce Christians, but disciples, followers, for whom this common Christian confession, Jesus is Lord, actually means something. You remember? I know you don't remember, but you remember Matthew 4? Flip back there with me. What does Jesus say to his first when he asked them to be his disciples? Let's go back and remind ourselves. Matthew chapter 4, verse 19. So we're early here in the Gospels. My ESV subheading says, Jesus calls the first disciples. Verse 19, he said to them, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." His first invitation to his first disciples. Notice 4 elements. We have obedience. He says, follow. We have relationship. Follow me. We have transformation. He says, I will make you. And then we have mission. Fishers of men. Obedience, relationship, transformation, and mission. A disciple is someone who's following Jesus, is being changed by Jesus, and is committed to the mission of Jesus. Again, it's most basically just a follower. What's a disciple? It's one who follows Jesus. What then does it mean to make disciples? If a disciple is a follower, what is this command? What is Jesus telling us to do? In short, making disciples is simply helping people follow Jesus. If a disciple is one who follows Jesus, what is making disciples? It's helping others follow Jesus. It's the simplest way we can put it, and that will look a whole host of ways. We're wanting to move people. They may be believers. We want to make disciples of believers. We want to help believers follow Jesus. They may have not yet crossed the line of conversion. We still want to help them follow Jesus. So we want to, by God's grace, by the power of the Spirit, help people move from wherever they are to where Jesus wants them. Where does Jesus want them? Becoming more like him. Increasingly, slowly, painfully slowly, but progressively over time. We want to move them from wherever we find them, and by the power of the Spirit, help move them to where Jesus wants them. And where does Jesus ultimately want them? Jesus wants them ultimately submitting every area of their lives to his lordship. And that takes a lifetime. I've got little pockets in my heart that are yet unevangelized. And I'm praying, Lord, show me, help me, so that I can take that and submit it to you as well. And then take that and submit that more fully. That's what the Christian life is. And so that's what disciple is. We want to help people from where they are to where Jesus wants them, which is wholehearted commitment. Fully formed disciples, where he's actually Lord over everything, our personal time and our finances and our relationships and our parenting and our jobs and our thoughts and our feelings and our actions, all of it. He says, all authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. Universal lordship. That's what he wants. His will is to be Lord of all. And if he's not Lord of all, he's not Lord at all. And so we are increasingly and progressively ourselves submitting to him and helping others do it. That's what a disciple is. It's what a disciple does. We follow Jesus and we help others follow Jesus. Listen again to the way Eugene Peterson paraphrases this in his book, The Message. So he's paraphrasing these verses of Jesus. It says, God authorized and commanded me to commission you. Go out and train everyone you meet, far and near, in the way of life, marking them by baptism in the threefold name, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Then instruct them in the practice of all that I've commanded. And I'll be with you as you do this day after day, right up to the end of the age. I love the way he draws out the fact that this is practical. This is formation. This is a way of life. All I have commanded you, instructed in the practice. Notice Jesus didn't tell his church, go preach. Could have said that. Jesus knows that verb. He didn't say, go teach. And I think, in fact, one of the reasons why, I'll share later, that I think the church has just dropped the ball in large measure on this is partly because of bad translation. I love the King James Version, but King Jimmy got it wrong on this one. Let me tell you what he said about 19. Go ye therefore and teach all nations. Now, teaching's involved. We saw that. It's the participle. But it's more than teaching. The verb is not teach. The verb is make disciples. Discipleship is more than teaching. It's more than information transfer. In fact, the focus is on right living more than right doctrine. And so we're to grow. We grow ourselves and then we help others grow in this ever-increasing loyalty to the commands of Jesus. Jesus is the master, and he gives us the master plan. This is what he came to do. Let me read to you from the Gospel of John. This is John 17:4, what we call the high priestly prayer. Jesus is praying, he says this. I wonder if you ever stopped on this verse. I glorified you on earth, he's praying to his Father. Father, I glorified you on earth, having accomplished the work you gave me to do. What's wrong with that picture? If I were to ask you, hey, what work did Jesus come to accomplish? Probably 95% of you would rightly say the cross, the finished work of Christ. Which is true, no doubt. It's just not all that he came to do. He prays before he's gone to the cross, I have accomplished the work you gave me to do. What work is he talking about? It's not the cross. It's the work of making disciples who will make disciples, who will make disciples, who will make disciples. That's the work. Jesus comes in and we look at him. What did the master do? You read the Gospels. What did the master do? Well, he invested really heavily in 3. Spent more time with them than anybody. That was his D group. And then he had his 12 that he had a lot of time with as well. And there's the crowds, which he cared for, but oftentimes he would leave when there were still lots of needs in the crowd. He had this plan. At the end of the day, what Jesus wants to do is to spread his rule all over the world. How's he going to do it? Well, he's going to start with 3 fallible, flaky men. And then 12 who would then go and disciple men and women who would make disciples, who would make disciples, who would make disciples. And here we are. It started with 12. Here we are in Abilene, Texas. Why? Because Jesus accomplished the work that his Father gave him to do. There's a classic, modern-day classic book called The Master Plan of Evangelism. It really is a better title, would be The Master Plan of Discipleship, by the name Robert Coleman. And he looks and he summarizes basically everything I just said. He makes it a little more complicated, but it's helpful to think about what did Jesus do? What was his work? And he gives us 8 steps. What was the Master's plan? Selection, association, consecration, demonstration, delegation, supervision, reproduction, and impartation. He's got to make them sound cool as a preacher does. But first, he selected people. People were his method. Association, Jesus was with them a lot. Consecration, he required them to obey. Demonstration, he showed them, he modeled for them how to live. And then delegation, he gave them the work. And then supervision, he continued to check in on them. He watched them, supervise. And then reproduction, Jesus expected them to reproduce. And then impartation, Jesus gave himself away to them ultimately through the Spirit. This is the master plan. This is what he did. And so following his plan, we, every believer, should find fat people, faithful, available, teachable. Select the right people, teachable people, and remain in close association with them. Get to know them, do life with them, all the normal stuff, relationship, and then consecrate them for mission. And then impart his teachings and the way of life we find in the Gospels to them, the whole word, and then demonstrate how to do it, show them how to live out of a kingdom paradigm. And part of that is showing them what to do when you fail, showing them what it means for sinners to confess their sin and turn from it. And then delegate to them so that they can begin sharing the gospel, and then supervise as they continue to grow and show them how to produce multiplying disciples themselves. It's the master's plan. At the end of the day, it's a complicated way of saying intentional, relational formation. Help others follow Jesus. And I think the church in America has really neglected this fundamental charge. It's more like the Great Omission than the Great Commission. It's one of the main problems. And I think the reason is we want results. We want everything fast in America. And we want the immediate. And so I think we have over-focused on getting decisions to the neglect of making disciples. We've prioritized producing converts rather than fully formed disciples. And we've painted a wrong picture of what the Christian life is. We've painted the Christian life as it's just praying a prayer, just getting your get out of hell free card, getting your fire insurance, as if it's just this mechanical transaction that has little to do with everyday life. New Testament could have been a lot shorter if it were simply pray a prayer and wait till you die to go to heaven. When you read the Bible, it focuses much more, not on one-time decisions, but following Jesus for all of life. And it's been a problem for us, our little stream of things, Baptists in particular. We just focus, let's just get the numbers. Check the box, mark them off, little notches on our belts. Let's focus on decisions, so much so that right now on paper, in America, there are 13.2 million Southern Baptists. But the average attendance in America is 3.8 million. On membership rolls, 13 million. People actually showing up to church, 3.8. Where are the 9,418,632 people? People who've prayed a prayer, walked an aisle, signed a card, been baptized, but are not following Jesus. They made a decision. They're not disciples. Back in 2016, the SBC did a major study, 20-year study. I think it was called the Great Commission Task Force. And so they were wanting to see, how are we doing as a convention here? Again, lots and lots of them, 46,000 churches, but how are we doing actually with discipleship? And so they went and did the big study from the previous 20 years, and they found out over these last 20 years, Southern Baptist churches have baptized 7.1 million people. It's incredible. 7.1 million baptisms in Southern Baptist churches. That's just one little slice of the kingdom. But as they continue to dig a little deeper, it's actually quite discouraging. Over that very same period of time, that same 20 years where we had 7 million decisions, our weekly attendance in churches actually dropped 24,000 people. Just think about that for a moment. If we baptize 7 million, should grow by around 7 million. We dropped 24,000 people in weekly attendance. Nashville, we have a problem. It's not just a problem in the SBC. We've focused more on one-time decisions rather than lifelong followers. Baptism is not the finish line. It's the starting line. And so we push because we want it fast and we want the decisions, decisionalism, and we will emotionally manipulate. I taught at 2 camps this past summer. One of the camps, they've got a big bell that anytime anyone makes a decision, you go and ring this massive bell. You know, especially if they have younger kids, elementary kids, and junior kids. What kid doesn't want to ring a bell? I want to ring a bell. I ring a bell and everybody comes and hugs me. Man, I'll ring that bell. And listen, on a Thursday night at a youth camp, you can get a kid to do anything you want. They are exhausted. They are emotional. And that's what we've done. We have emotionally manipulated people. We'll play that stanza 3 and 4 times. Please just make a decision. What we've done is we've offered a version of a mechanical transaction instead of the life Jesus calls to. What we've offered is cheap grace. The German martyr Dietrich Bonhoeffer said, cheap grace is the preaching of forgiveness without requiring repentance. It's baptism without church discipline. It's communion without confession. Cheap grace is grace without discipleship, grace without the cross, grace without Jesus Christ. Cheap grace is no grace at all. But that's what we do because we want just to get the decision. We try to make it as easy as possible. Every head bowed, every eye closed. God forbid someone might know that you're interested in following the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. And we emotionally manipulate. You ever notice how Jesus invites, though? Flip over to the Gospel of Luke, Matthew, Mark, Luke. How does Jesus invite people to follow him? Does he make sure no one else knows about it? Does he make it as easy as possible? Look at Luke 9:23. And Jesus said to all, if anyone would come after me, here's his invitation. Let him deny himself and take up his cross. Remember, the cross is an instrument of execution. Be ready to die. And not only that, daily. Take up his cross daily and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it. But whoever loses, you want to come to Christ, lose your life. Whoever loses life for my sake will save it. For what does it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses or forfeits himself? For whoever is ashamed of me and of my words, of him will the Son of Man be ashamed. You better raise that head and open those eyes when he comes in the glory of the Father and of the holy angels. Flip over to Luke chapter 14. Does Jesus make it easy? No, he actually makes it hard. He says, wait, hold up, you better be sure. You better count the cost. Look at Luke 14:25. Now great crowds accompanied him, and he turned and said to them, if anyone comes to me, this is invitation, and does not hate his own father and mother and wife and children and brothers and sisters, yes, even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. Whoever does not bear his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. For which of you, desiring to build a tower, does not first sit down and count the cost? It's like, wait, you want to follow me? Slow down. Let's think about this. Which of you desiring to build a tower does not first sit down and count the cost, whether he has enough to complete it? Otherwise, when he's laid a foundation and is not able to finish, all who see it begin to mock him, saying, this man began to build and was not able to finish. Or what king, going out to encounter another king in war, will not sit down first and deliberate whether he is able with 10,000 to meet him who comes against him with 20,000? And if not, while the other is yet a great way off, he sends a delegation and asks for terms of peace. So, therefore, any of you who does not renounce all that he has cannot be my disciple. Jesus didn't teach cheap grace. He demanded costly grace. He didn't want just little decisions. He didn't want little half-hearted, one-time emotionally driven decisions. He wants disciples who will count the cost and lay their whole life down and follow him their whole lives. He doesn't want people who merely believe the right things about him. He wants people to follow him. We bring them in, yes, and then we build them up. That's what the Great Commission is. The job is not done when someone makes that initial decision. The job has only begun. And so what does this mean for you? Well, we want to obey. We want to forge a better path. The path of Jesus, which is the path to a meaningful life. And so the question is, I just want to ask you, are you a disciple of Jesus? Are you following him? I didn't ask if you believed in him. I didn't ask if you believe Jesus is the Son of God. I didn't ask if you've been baptized. I didn't ask if you've made a decision. I didn't ask if you've walked the aisle. I'm asking, are you a disciple of Jesus today? If you're here and you're absolutely not, I'm glad you're here. You hear his command. What he would say is, it's costly. You'll lose everything to follow me, but it's worth it. You have questions, we'd love to talk to you about coming to faith. Some of you have professed faith. You've made the decision, but I want to press you a little bit. Let Jesus press you. Are you following him? Jesus said in Luke 6:46, why do you call me Lord, Lord, but don't do what I tell you to do? I'm afraid we treat Jesus kind of like we treat Siri, and we think we've got a better direction. We know better than Siri. Rerouting, we treat the Lord that way. No. We're the ones that need to reroute around his plan. Francis Chan gives the illustration of how sometimes we as Christians know more than we actually obey. And we can actually use studying the Bible to evade the Bible itself. And so if I were to tell my kids, hey, all right, guys, go clean your room. Go clean your room. And they scurry off and, a couple hours go by or whatever. And I come back and I say, did y'all get the room clean? And I peek in. Sure don't look like it. Well, no, Dad, here's what we did, man. We took those words, go clean your room, and we wrote them down. Go clean your room. And we went and we huddled up and, man, we read it. And we even paraphrased it. We read a few different translations, So-and-so, they diagrammed it. Go, main verb, go, and clean your room. We even looked in the original. Go clean your room. No. Go do it. And they go and spend a few more times. They go back, did y'all get the room clean? Well, not exactly, but we memorized it. You said, quote, go clean your room. And we meditated on it, man. We really feel like we understand the authorial intent. But I asked you to go clean your room. Some of us, friends, are more educated. We're educated beyond our obedience. Elizabeth Elliot said, the will of God is not something you add to your life. It's a course you choose. You either line yourself up with the Son of God or you capitulate to the principle which governs the rest of the world. And so, are you a disciple? In these verses, the Great Commission, they actually define the disciple, right? Notice it's a self-replicating command. Jesus commands his disciples to make disciples. What is making disciples? We've already, it's helping people follow Jesus. And then we're going to look at two specific ways he tells us as we go and we baptize and we teach everything Jesus commanded. What did Jesus command? Well, among other things, go make disciples. So disciples go tell people what Jesus commanded, make disciples. So a disciple is one who makes disciples, who makes disciples, who makes disciples. There's a very real sense, according to the Great Commission, that if you're not in some way making disciples, you're not a disciple. If you're not helping other people follow Jesus, you're not following Jesus. We want to help you do that at Southside. Listen, one of the main ways we do this at Southside is through this mechanism we call D groups. And I just want to just boast on you for a moment of how well you're doing. There is a vibrant culture of discipleship in this church, honestly, and in a way that I've never experienced. And I talk with a lot of friends and pastor friends, and the culture of discipleship here is unique because of your faithfulness to follow the Lord. So thank you. It's a joy to pastor this church. You guys are doing so well when it comes to following Jesus in this way. More encouraged by the culture of discipleship among you than I am anything else in this church. So we have a high view of the word, but you're doing it. And so keep doing it. Keep doing it. Listen, if you're new here, D groups are 3 to 6 men or 3 to 6 women who meet together weekly, ideally, and here's the goal: spiritual growth. That's the goal. It's an intentional meeting. Jesus had 3, Peter, James, and John, so 4 might be the ideal number. These men, these women, same gender, they meet weekly and they commit to helping each other grow spiritually from anywhere between 3 months to 18 months. From 60 minutes, most of the dudes, to 90 minutes, most of the gals. And the goal is to multiply when each person replicates the group by inviting others to take the same journey of discipleship once they're finished. Disciples are those who make disciples who make disciples. And so a D group comes together for about an hour, conversation, a little bit of content, whether that's the word or a book that we vetted. We've got a list on our website, a book that's going to help you grow. You memorize scripture together, you pray together. Hopefully you're praying for lost people some in your D groups. 2 main goals: maturity and multiplication. Maturity, the goal is to help one another follow Jesus, to build a culture of one-on-one discipleship in the church, to work towards meaningful church membership, where we do each other's spiritual good deliberately, to hold one another accountable. That's why they're smaller and that's why they're same gender. It's in a place where you can be trusted and you can be known and you can be honest about your shortcomings and confess your sin and ask hard questions. Encourage our hearts. At the end of the day, we're building Christian friendships here. Ultimately, the goal is to become like Jesus for the glory of God, help others do the same. We've actually got on our website under ministries, we've got a section here. If you want to learn more, a bunch of mechanics on how to do them, what you can do, a bunch of resources. Encourage you to check it out if you've never checked it out. There's also a section on that same page, tips for one-on-one Bible reading. And so you're going to just say read through Philippians, Ephesians, Colossians, whatever it is, and there's several questions you can ask during that content time of a D group. Whatever you're doing, helping one another. Follow the Lord. Maturity, and then multiplication. So the goal is, hey, brothers, hey, sisters, we're going to meet together for this set time period. You know what? Each one of us is going to go grab new people. And in God's kindness, we've got a lot of new people in this church. Need to be discipled. So the goal is never just to have our little holy huddle that ends there, but it's to multiply. Just think if you had your D group of 4. Let's say all of you multiplied. Those 3, they become 9. Those 9, they become 27. Those 27, they become 81, becomes 243, becomes 729, becomes 2,187. This is how the kingdom expands. This is biblical faithfulness. This is biblical success. Not how many disciples are made, but how many disciples are making disciples. The great co-mission. This is what you can give your life to. These are our marching orders. Jesus has all authority in heaven and on earth. Therefore, go and make disciples. C.S. Lewis said this: The church exists for nothing else but to draw men into Christ, to make them little Christs. If they are not doing that, all the cathedrals, clergy, missions, sermons, even the Bible itself are simply a waste of time. God became man for no other purpose. It is even doubtful, whether the whole universe was created for any other purpose. We draw people in and we make them little Christs. The great co-mission. Let's pray.